Thank you for joining. This is our first French Innovators event. Natalie Bastin, Taking Our Pictures, has organized all of this. We're featuring French entrepreneurs in the United States. Today, two French innovators, Antoine Bello and Jonathan Benhamou, will share their stories and explore the challenges and perhaps, we say, the advantages of building a new business in the United States. Actually, what I've heard is that the HEC sends their graduates over here and tells them to get out of France because it's too hard to do it there. A plug for us, if you don't know the French-American Foundation, we were founded in 1976 in New York and Paris by Presidents Giscard d'Estaing and Ford. We're celebrating, as you can tell, our 40th anniversary. We've worked for a long time to enrich the transatlantic relationship between the United States and France. We think it's essential in the world today, all the more recently. We bring together leaders, policymakers, and a wide range of professionals to exchange views and share experiences in areas of mutual concern like this. Our flagship program is our young leaders, and we are very pleased to have one of our young leaders here. Antoine, I don't know how we missed Jonathan.
I applied this here, actually.
Good. In France or here?
Here.
Here, good. Okay. You have to talk to Irene about that. So we have a young leader alum, Antoine, which we're very proud to have. It's also a pleasure to welcome William O'Farrell, co-founder, CEO of Body Labs, and also an adjunct professor at Columbia Business School. You can ask him to moderate the discussion. Since he's already made every mistake possible, he can't do anything wrong here.
I can just do the same one.
Make the same ones again, yeah. He's most recently been investing in consulting to several early stage companies, including a fashion tech company, a social media company, and several clean tech ventures. I don't know how he has time for all this, but it's probably one of his many mistakes. Without any more, Bill, please.
Thank you very much. I was amused. I was figuring, well, with a name like O'Farrell, I was the most natural moderator of the panel here. But just 2 seconds, I was amused because I'm somewhat embarrassed to admit that I started life as a lawyer. And my very first job in the summer was I was a summer associate at Baker & McKenzie. And then my second summer I was a summer associate at Baker & McKenzie in Paris. So somehow maybe the wheel has come full circle.
That was not a mistake.
Anyway, I'd like to introduce our two panelists and want to welcome you all and thank you very much for coming. Antoine Bello is founder of Ubiqus?
Ubiqus in French, Ubiqus in English.
And is likewise a novelist. And I just found out was recently awarded the Chevalier des Arts et des Lettres. Yes. Congratulations. Jonathan Benhamou, likewise an entrepreneur who is the founder of PeopleDoc. And what these guys have in common, most specifically, is they both come from France to run and grow their companies here. So I thought what we do is spend a couple minutes with each of our guests, have them talk a little bit about their experiences and motivations. I'll try to elicit a conversation with a couple questions, and we'll open it up to the group. So, Antoine, would you like to start?
Sure. Should I speak from here?
Sure.
I think
this goes so much.
Good. Can everybody hear us?
Okay. Yeah. So, yes, my name is Antoine Bello. I'm 46. I have a pretty strange experience in both the corporate and the artistic world. I started my business when I was 20. I was still a student in HEC Business School, and I wanted to run my own business, and I started this company with a friend of mine, my best friend. And this company was offering a new service. We would take the minutes of any type of meeting, could be a seminar, a convention, it could be a corporate retreat. We would attend the meeting, take notes, record the meeting, and then produce a document, a summary, within a very short turnaround, including, our flagship product was called the real-time summary. So you would really leave the room with a copy of the minutes in your hand. And that product proved to be very successful, and the company grew beyond our wildest expectations, to the point that after 10 years we had 120 employees. We listed the company on the French stock market. We expanded to the UK and to the US. We acquired a company here in New York. The address was of that company is worth mentioning. It's 305 Broadway, very close to the World Trade Center. And unfortunately, we made that acquisition in February of 2001. Just, by the way, when the American economy went into recession. So after September 11, the state of the business in our industry especially, which is the meeting industry, no one would organize a convention in New York for a while. So the business was, the activity was tumbling. We were losing money hand over fist. And that's when we decided, my partners and I, that maybe one of us should come here to the US and try to turn this operation around, because we had invested a lot of money in it, and we could either shut it down or try to turn it around. So I volunteered. It was 2002. I volunteered because I've always felt a very deep connection to the US. I was born in the US, but that's, that was a random, I guess, birth. My father was a student in Boston, French, 100% French, so was my mother. But so I felt that deep connection to the US, and I also wanted to live a family experience. I wanted my kids to learn English. I wanted them to see, the world. And so we moved in August of 2002, rented a house in Westchester, and I started to commute every day to my office on Broadway. So, fortunately, we were able to turn around that operation. I made 2 small acquisitions on the West Coast to, give us a greater footprint in the US. And at that point, I realized that my job in the US was pretty much done. I appointed my American CFO, gave her the CEO position, and I started to ask myself, or my wife and I started to ask ourselves, should we go back to France? Should we stay in the US? And we decided that we would stay a little longer. The kids could benefit from another 2 or 3 years, and that got me to 2007, when I decided that my partner and I decided to sell the business. The business had grown tremendously. We were at that time a 400 employee company. Company was extremely profitable. We had taken it private. When the markets were extremely low in 2003, we bought back the company from the stock market, and we sold it again to a private equity firm in 2007. And at that time, for the first time in my life, I had time on my hands, and I decided that I wanted to go back to my first love, and my first love was and has always been literature. I've always written short stories, novels, poems, plays at some point. And I had already published a couple of books with Gallimard, a French publisher, while I was working at Ubiqus, my company. But in the last years of Ubiqus, it had become too difficult with the children and with their responsibilities, and I missed that tremendously. So in 2007, when we sold Ubiqus, I went back to my desk and computer and started to write novels. And since then, I've published, I think, 6. I've written 2 more. So I'm now a full-time novelist, if you will, publishing in France, getting translated to many different countries. Unfortunately, the US is not one of them, which is, you know, says something to the, I mean, it's a reflection of the fact that very few books in the US are translations. Translations account for between 1 and 2% of the American market, compared to 25% in France and 40 or 50% in some European countries. So very difficult to get a publisher in the US. They don't care if you are pretty successful in France. It's not relevant to them. So I've just taken upon myself to have 5 of my books published, translated, and I will publish those books on Amazon next month, because you got to start somewhere. So that's my experience. Yes, I should mention also that on the side, I'm also investing in some companies, both in France and in the US, investing in startups as a business angel. And I'm also a member of the investment committee of a private equity firm in Paris called New Fund, which finances early stage companies in technology and other fields. And so as an investment, as a member of the investment committee, I get to see all the investments of the firm. So that's extremely interesting.
Cool. That's a good start.
Good.
That's a good start. Well, we let Jonathan do the same, and then we'll see what happens next.
Hi, everybody. So first, thank you, Antoine. I mean, you have an amazing life, so I think it will be hard for me actually to go after you. But first, I have to tell you that before I moved to the US 2 years ago, I was a big fan. I mean, I'm still a big fan, but I was a big fan of Antoine, and I read like his book. And when I first arrived in New York, actually, the first thing I wanted to do was to meet with him and to see the guy who was behind this book. So I'm really happy to do a conference with him now. So I'm younger, I'm 32. I have 2 kids as well. I started my company. I mean, I've been to HEC as well, but I mean, no one knows HEC here. So actually, it's just. I think when you come to the US, you have to just like realize that you will just forget about your school and your study, because it doesn't count here. And that's a big difference actually from France, because when you do HEC in France, actually you can reach out to anyone, and you are here with an HEC business card. I mean, actually, it's the same. Everybody knows La Sorbonne, actually, which is a university. Everybody can go to La Sorbonne. I mean, but anyway, so I started my company actually in 2007 when I was still in college, like in HEC, which is the Harvard of France. I like to say that because just like, I'm kidding actually. I don't care about school, but it's just some people are saying that when they come in the US. Anyway, so I started in 2007 because I met with a very famous entrepreneur in France, which is who is Pierre Kosciusko-Morizet. He sold his company, which was Price Minister, to Rakuten, which is a Japanese company. And he's a very famous guy, and I met with him in 2007. I was 23 at this time. So I was really impressed, and he gave me an idea, which was to create a company website in which you could receive your pay stub, your bank statement, your invoices, and just to put it, to have all these documents in one place online. So basically the goal was to disrupt the post service, the post mail. And so I started with this idea. I made as many mistakes as you, I think. I'm
just wait, just wait.
But I mean, basically I asked 3 friends of mine to become my partners. But basically we knew the same thing, so meaning nothing, because we were in a business school. So we took, of course, the same apartment, so we were like roommates for a year, and this is not a good idea when you start a company, actually. I mean, we did like all the mistakes. We didn't have any CEO. I mean, we didn't appoint any one of us as the CEO, but all of us had 25% of the company and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so for 2 years, we didn't do any revenue. So 0 in 2007, 0 in 2008, and 0 in 2009, actually. But we were young and full, so I mean, actually, we didn't realize that we were starting the company. At this time, it was more like a soccer association or whatever. But in 2009, actually, so we raised money, actually. We raised 500K when we just first started in 2007. And we raised money again in 2009, actually. It was $600,000. And at some point in 2009, our investors just started to ask some question about, okay, when do you think you will start making some money? And it was the real start of PeopleDoc, actually. So the company was named NovaPost at this time until 2010. And at the end of 2009, actually, we pivoted the company into the HR, the human resources space and industry, with the first product which was to digitalize the pay stub. I mean, I know that if you're American, you won't understand that, but basically in France, you need to send, I mean, before PeopleDoc, you had to send your pay stub paper-based. You couldn't send them electronically. And you have to store your pay stub for 50 years in France, 50. So I know that it looks unbelievable, but this is okay. So we found a way actually to send this pay stub in an electronic way, in a website, like in an electronic port. And we started like that in 2010. We asked two founders actually to leave the company, so it was really hard actually at this time to do that because we were the same age, we had the same knowledge, skills. So we had to decide to just split the team because it didn't work. And from 2010, actually, we started to know better the HR world, and we started to develop a platform for the HR department, which is what we call today an HR service delivery platform, which enables HR to manage all the administrative tasks online. So if you want to sign a contract electronically, if you want to archive a document, your HR document worldwide, because you have different retention periods from one country to another. I don't know, in the US, you need to archive your I-9 for 3 years in New York, for 4 years in Rhode Island, for 5 years in San Francisco. No one knows how to do that today. So we developed a solution that enables HR to do that. So we, just like long story short, we have 150 employees today. We raised $55 million. Since 2010, so actually it went really well. We opened 5 countries, so France, Germany, UK, Canada, and the US. I moved to the US to open the US office in 2014. And actually just, I think it will be the transition for the question, Bill, but I moved with my wife, my 2 kids, and I had a very small office with no windows, no customers, no partners, and I didn't know anyone. I mean, actually really, I didn't have any friends. And it was like tough because I had a company that was working pretty well in France. We were starting to be well known in France, to have some credit and to do some conference, everything. So, and I left because I wanted to start it again in the US. And I arrived here and I just like realized that coming in a new country is like just starting over a new company. And so I had this office by myself, my 2 kids, my wife, no salary because my wife was a dentist, so she had to move and stop activity because you cannot practice when you're in the US. American people don't have the same teeth, actually.
We have fangs.
Yeah, exactly. And I started to try to sell a solution, and I signed by chance 3 first customers. 2 of them were French, Natixis and Jacadi, but one of them was Coach. Like I'm sure like half of this room will know Coach. And we signed this contract, which was a big contract for us. But I think it was because I was the CEO of the company, so it helps actually in the US. And we raised $17.5 million at this moment based on these 3 customers in the US because we had traction with Axel Partners, which is one of the best VC in the world. And they put $17.5 million in the company. I started to hire 25 people in the US in 2014. And from May, the fundraising, to December, we haven't signed any customer. No customer. I mean, we didn't sign any customer. We didn't do any new revenue. And it was like just really hard, actually. And the reason why, actually, we didn't sign any customer was because, first, I stepped back from the business, and I started to hire people. And the second one is that I hired only the wrong people. And why? Because I'm a French guy. I haven't had this culture, this American culture. I didn't try to understand it at first. I mean, I tried to just transfer my knowledge, my management skills or unskills or whatever, just to the US. And I hired these 25 people, and in December 2014 or January 2015, I just realized that I had made so many mistakes, and I had to terminate actually 20 of them and restart from scratch. And so from March 2015, we started to just like have an amazing growth. And today we have 40 people in the US. We've signed like American Express Worldwide, Georgetown University, University of Massachusetts. So we have dozens of customers in the US, but the lesson I just learned there is that I tried to import a model from France and to impose it into the US. And I think the US is a completely different culture, a completely different market, and you need to just like have a white paper when you come here, whatever your culture, wherever you come from, and to just start over and to try to understand the people, the market, and the customer. And I haven't done that, so I learned.
That's great. That actually is a pretty decent point of departure. And before I get to the sort of the differences, which I think everybody would be interested in, I'm just kind of curious from both of you guys, why as co-founders and CEOs, why did you choose yourselves as the people to come here? Why not find a VP of international sales or an American presence? What was it about this opportunity or the problem that required the CEO?
Well, I mentioned that we bought our company in February of 2001. We first sent someone to run that company. The owners of the company were all, of course, Americans, siblings, 3 siblings, hardcore Scientologists, which made things.
That's the beginning of the cultural differences.
Yeah, well, it was a bit strange. When I moved into the CEO office, like the year after, there was an entire bookshelf filled with books by Ron Hubbard. It was wow. It was a shock. So we sent someone, and we sent a young woman, very good sales. She was our sales manager in French. And we thought that she would do a very good job, instill some energy into this their sales department. And actually, that was it was a horrible mistake. She knew very little about the American culture, and she did not understand how our position in the US was very different from our position in France, just like Jonathan described. In France, we are a premium provider of high value-added service. We charge very high prices because we're the best of the best, only recruiting, graduate students, literally. So that was our culture in France. In the US, the company we bought was really was not, in the same category. They were not boxing in the same category, not at all. They were high school dropouts selling transcription services like maybe 30 different firms in New York. So they had to compete on prices and, of course, quality and turnaround, but very often prices. And she arrived in this company, and she did, she rubbed everybody the wrong way, the employees and the clients. And you can win in this country, just I guess like in any other country, you can win a customer. It takes a long time to win a customer. You can lose that customer very quickly, and that's what she did. Like for instance, a focus group company would call and say, we need a discount on our, we give you $50,000 worth of business every year. We need a discount, we cannot make ends meet, it's the depression, it's the recession. And she would say, we don't budge on prices. But come on, you've got to do something, give me something, 5%, 10%. No, and if you call again, it will be more expensive. Okay, boom. That's how you lose a customer, like this. And she did that a few times. And when I arrived, the business was 40%. I mean, I found the business cut in half, basically. So yes, at some point, and she did the same with the employees. Employees didn't like her at all. That's an understatement. So, and when I arrived, I realized that, even though I was, I'd never lived in I had studied for 6 months in Berkeley, but even though I'd never worked in the US, I knew much more about the US than she did. And still, I learned, plenty after that, but I knew already more than that. And I think I had an owner mentality, and I think that that's the big, big difference. Like, I won't take no for an answer. If something doesn't work, I'm not trying to blame someone else. I have only myself to blame. I need to come up with a solution. You can only say, it's because of, this client is a jerk, or, this employee was bad, I had to let him go. You can say that maybe once, twice at the most. After a while, if you hemorrhage business, the problem lies with you. You have to do something else, and that's what we did. And we rebuilt the company from the ground up. I mean, even though you didn't find a business like this, I think that's also, it's probably your experience as well.
Yeah, sure. And first, I think that's mandatory if you want to start the company in the US. That's a CEO move. I mean, actually, there's no way to start a company if the CEO is not moving, for many reasons. But it brings another question, which is when should you move, actually? Because if the CEO moves from the headquarters, which is France or whatever country, I mean, it can be bad for the rest of the company. So you have to choose the right moment. And it's always, and it's often too soon or too late. So, I mean, basically, I saw so many people who said, I need to come to the US, it's amazing, I will start my office in the US. And they do only like 500K of revenue in France. They have, 20 people, they're not really stable in the country or in the market. And when the CEO moves to the US, actually, people are by themselves. They don't know really how to manage a company. And so basically you lose everything, because as a CEO, you move to the US, it won't work because you will be alone and you won't have any support, and France will collapse. And also when you come to the US, it's really expensive. So you will have to do choices in terms of investment. Do I want to invest this money in the US, or do I want to invest it in my first market? And so I think you have to really understand when you should leave as a CEO. But what is sure for me is that the CEO needs to move. And the reason why is because in my market, actually, in my industry, if you want to become a global leader, you need to be in the US. And that's mandatory. And the thing is that if you want to prove to the market that this is not a test, but this is a strategy, you need to show that moving. I mean, you need to show that through the fact that the CEO is moving to the US. So that's the decision we have made. And basically, I think that was a good decision because that's how we raised money. And if you are here in the US and you start to sign customers in the US, I mean, basically you attract American investors, and an American investor won't invest in a company in which the CEO is not in the US. So, and the last thing is that basically what happened in 2014 actually with me could have happened with anyone else that I would have sent from France to the US. But the thing is that, as you said, I wouldn't have understood, and it would have been his fault, like the fault of the guy I would have sent. But because it was me, actually, I understood that this was a market, and also myself, because I made lots of mistakes. And basically, you need to live it, you need to feel it, to solve the problem you have, and to understand this market, and to really hire the right people, and to have the right strategy. So I think you need to be here.
very helpful. So that then introduces the question. Now we only have an hour, so let's not. But the cultural differences. You know, so far, I know that Americans don't read much. We got bad teeth, and we don't know the French IVDs. But beyond that, you know, talk about what were these problems? Why the mistakes were so grave, and what didn't you see?
I need to be careful on what I'm going to say, actually.
No, you're in a safe place. Go ahead.
No, but I know, like, sometimes it's really, I'm straight, actually. Yeah, sorry. So sorry. No, how can I say that? Actually, I did a conference 2 days ago, and some people came to say, you should just, like, be careful on what you're saying about American people. So I was just like, no, but I'm kidding. First, I mean, actually, I have to tell you, America is a country of bullshit, and actually, and this is really important to understand that. Actually, my sons are going to school, and every Monday they do a show and tell. And I mean, actually, they market themselves when they're 3 and 6. Sorry, in France, actually, we are like the country which is like so far from marketing ourselves, and everybody in the US thinks that France is a communist country. Everybody thinks that we pay more taxes in France than in the US. I mean, it's just crazy. But this is not true, actually. I pay more taxes in the US than in France. But because people are good in marketing, I mean, in the US, it's just like the reality is completely different when you come here or when you are, when you start to understand the US. So first, I would say that you need to be careful. As a French guy, you need to be careful with I mean, like the people that are overselling themselves, actually. So I made a lot of mistakes during interviews, actually. People were like just so good, and I mean, I remember the first time I moved to the US, everybody was a star for me, and actually that was crazy. I saw so many people coming from Salesforce, from like all this amazing SaaS company. And actually, when you hire them, and you understand that maybe they spend only 1 month at Salesforce, or that they didn't go to Salesforce, they were not at Salesforce. So a lot of people are lying on the resume. It doesn't happen actually in France. That's so that you have background checking here. We don't have background check in France, actually. It doesn't exist because people are honest on the background. So that was the first thing. So you need to be careful. You need to dig a little bit deeper when you do an interview, when you hire people. Second thing is that I think so. I mean, I think you have to be careful on the with your management practice. I mean, actually, in the US, you cannot be straight. You cannot be frank. You have to be a little bit polished. I mean, you have to. It's always the same. Like you have to say something good, but something wrong. I mean, actually, in France, you are really straight. I mean, if you want to say something to someone, you can do it. And you don't need to be positive all the time. And actually, I had some problem with that because, I mean, there's a cultural difference on that. And the third thing is about marketing, actually. We didn't really understand what was the marketing. We have a different way to do product marketing in France than in the US. And basically here, everything is about customers. You need to speak about your customers. In France, you need to speak about your product. And we had a hard time to understand that. And as soon as we started to really like highlight your customer and to ask them to speak for us, because that's something that they're doing here in the US, I mean, it started to work really well. There are 3 things, but I think I have like a list of that.
There's time.
Yeah.
There's time. Well, would you agree? Would you expand?
Yes, about what you said about the resumes and applicants. I remember the first salesperson I had to hire. You know, we put up an ad on Monster, and we received, it was Monster at the time, and we received like 50 resumes. And I opened the first one, and I think, okay, you know, I'm stopping here. That guy is just too good. You know, exceeded quotas by 45%, 9 years in a row, was the President's Club for 5 years, all these accomplishments. I couldn't believe it. So I went to my to see my CFO, and I said, I think I found him. You know, he's extremely good. She reads it like very unimpressed. Says, yeah, open the second letter. You know, and I opened the second one. Oh my God, is even better. And it took me a while to realize that, you know, it doesn't mean anything. When they're all like this, it doesn't mean anything. I made a few mistakes recruiting people as well, yeah. What interests me here in this country is that I think Americans have a much sounder perception of reality. They are more pragmatic, and I like that. This is one of the reasons why I'm still in this country, even though I sold my company 9 years ago. I love that. France right now seems to be governed by ideology. It's like PC, but it's more in the US. In France, it's more EC, economically correct. It's not about your race or your religion. It's really more about you're at the top of the food chain. You must have done something really bad. I mean, there is that quote from Balzac, very interesting quote that says, "Behind every fortune lies a crime." And it says so much about the French mentality. Here, people are more I mean, sometimes it's the opposite, excess. Like for instance, oh, this guy is very rich. He must be great. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Exactly. Not always. But no, what I like is that Americans don't try to judge reality. Reality is what it is. And that's what it should be, I think. French judge reality all the time. What I see in front of me, no, that's not fair. That cannot be. It should be changed, It's a disgrace. No, it is what it is. It's the market, at work, or it's just, the rules of nature. It's just, it's gravity sometimes. One day they will explain to you that, oh, this object is falling when you push it off a cliff. It shouldn't be. Well, I think it will continue for quite a while. So I like that, and of course it translates into a much better proclivity to adapt to change. Americans, I won't say that they welcome change, but when they see a trend, at some point,